But I just want to say someone takes this clip out of context and just as Simon Bridges wants a capital gains tax.
Welcome to Slice, property made possible. We're a platform on a mission to reduce barriers to home ownership. This podcast is a safe space for our community to learn together and build the confidence required to start on their property journey. When you're ready to start, head along to slicetobuy.com and sign up for your free dashboard. Welcome to another episode of Slice, the property podcast. Today I'm super pumped. We're joined by Simon Bridges. Hey, Simon.
Hey, Amy, really good to be with you.
Thanks for joining us. So we kick these off by asking about your first home purchase. What is it that you remember, Simon?
I remember it well. We still actually have the apartment. It was a little apartment, and still is a little apartment in Parnell. And I can't really remember, like I must have been late 20s, maybe early 30s, married to my wife, Natalie. As I say, our first place, and she was definitely working in Auckland. I can't remember if I was or if by then I was. No, I was probably working in Tauranga as a lawyer, but because she was working out there, we thought we'd get our first place in Auckland. And so actually, big process. We went out there, we looked at lots of stuff. We looked at another apartment in Parnell on Ruskin Street, I remember, but it was a leaker. So I'm glad we bought the report. We sort of stretched to whatever it was. I'm making this up, but was it like $1,400 or something to get the report? And we were heartbroken by that because that was an amazing location and kind of actually was more of a townhouse, that one. And then we kept looking.
It feels too good to be true, though.
Correct. No, the readings were like whoop 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 whoop. So we couldn't take that one. And then eventually we got this one that we've got on Cheshire Street, Parnell, and it was fantastic. But it's nerve-wracking because it's like, mortgage, feels like a lot of mortgage. So I don't think we had much of a deposit, if any, kind of. Yeah. But back then they didn't seem to care.
Back then you could get away with it, yeah.
And but it's all worked out. Actually, that one we have paid off, so that is good. And probably one of the better investment we make, because I think it's, even though it's an apartment, so it hasn't gone up the way houses sometimes do. They were glory years. Like, we didn't have children. Life was good. We ate out.
You know what that's
We were
inferring?
smug.
Yeah.
We could sleep in. All of those things that it's inferring are true.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, we actually had someone on a recent episode saying they'd bought an apartment and it did turn out to be leaky, but they sold it before.
Good. That sounds a little bit dishonest.
I don't know that they knew until after.
Right.
Well, I hope not. It wasn't positioned in that way.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're looking at this as a politician and thinking, I can discredit that.
Yeah, exactly. Used to be a criminal lawyer. As a criminal lawyer, I can cross-examine that. No, No, that was so the one we bought wasn't. It was it was old sugar factory or something, I think. I might be making that up, but a flour factory or something. Concrete. It was great. Great location. Great apartments. Solid build. Everything's alike. Trying to rent it at the moment, actually.
So you still own it as well?
We still own it.
Amazing.
Warren Buffett kind of principle of life, buy, don't sell.
Yeah.
So we hold that, and actually when we moved back to Auckland, the apartment was not being rented, and so we moved in there. But we moved back into that 2-bedroom apartment with 3 children. And that was not great.
Not ideal. But
yeah, it was kind of like
it's
everyone on mattresses and quite communal. But
yeah,
I think we stayed there 3 or 4 years before we bought the place we live in now. Yeah,
nice. And you spoke about criminal law before, and that's sort of where your career started. Then, of course, you're very well known since moving into politics, and now you're at the Auckland Business Chamber.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about what that career journeys look like, why you've kind of moved, you've done, a lot of great things?
I didn't necessarily intend to be a lawyer. I intended firstly to do a PhD in politics and be an academic or something, but my father kind of bullied me into law, so I did law, and actually I really enjoyed law and was in a big firm, liked that, but I wanted to do kind of what was on the television and be a Crown prosecutor doing jury trials. I got a good opportunity to do that in Tauranga, so that's why I moved there. And I didn't necessarily intend to stay, but that sort of turned from 2-3 years I thought it would be into, like I say, a long time. Then I sort of became a member of Parliament. So I really enjoyed being a criminal lawyer. Jury trials, very hard work though.
Yeah.
And actually in a way I was burned out when I went to Parliament from that. I kind of had had enough. You don't realise these things sometimes till
So you went to
till you quit.
government to have a break.
Yeah, kind of. And it was a bit like that. It's like
Is
you
that
don't
what they
realise
all
you.
do,
Well,
Simon?
what do they say? Change is as good as a break or a
Yeah,
holiday
yeah,
or something, you know.
yeah.
So and I was young, so I was 32. I went to Parliament, and again, it's a bit like law. I didn't necessarily intend it to be for. I know I was good at law, and then Parliament. I didn't necessarily. You don't know if it's going to turn out to be 3 years or a million or what. So
Yeah.
you sort of go and you suck the beer. And I thought it'd be lucky if I kind of got to I don't know, be a backbencher select committee chair or something. But I was really lucky. I went at a good time. John Key liked me, and I got a lot of promotion, and ended up very senior in government. And so that was a great privilege. And then obviously opposition leader, and then by the end of that, I don't know, my kids were there's like 50,000 reasons, but my kids were getting a bit older, still young, and now they're 11, 9, and 5. And I kind of realized if I stayed in, I'd do another decade or something, and I'd get out and I'd be old, and I wouldn't know my kids, and my wife probably would have divorced me. And so we made the call to get out, and it's been great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and what's this new role look like?
It's still really busy. It's never a dull moment. It's a bit like politics in that it's got a lot of what I would call optionality. You can kind of, in politics, one of the great privileges, which is true as well in this role as head of a business association, the Auckland Business Chamber, you kind of, if you want to do something within reason, if it's kind of
You
within
can sort of move
you
across.
can move it that way,
Yeah.
if you're interested in international business, or if you're interested in startups and what's happening at Grid Auckland, or you can focus on that. And that's true in politics as well. It's a privilege of politics. You can you want to focus on housing, or you want to focus on foreign affairs, or you want to focus on whatever, you can sort of do that. So it's very interesting. I feel privileged to have the role. It's very stimulating. It's helping businesses in Auckland, making it easier for business in Auckland. It's still got some of the things I enjoy, which is profile and that. So no, it's good. And then I'm also on some company boards. I also suppose I do a little bit of podcast myself and some media stuff.
Yes,
So
you do, you
so
do.
it's like a portfolio.
Yeah.
It's a portfolio of things, and
kind
that's
of-
really cool.
Yeah, I guess you get variety. Like in the same
Totally.
way that I do with Slice as a business owner, you're moving across every part of the business.
Yeah.
If you're in, a role that's overseeing that for
Yeah.
other businesses, there's still going to be, very different aspects
Yeah.
of New Zealand business that you can look into. And
Totally right. And, I think I would struggle to be not just, it's important, but CEO of a business that did blah, made widgets or something. I think
Really
every
specific
day I'd
kind
be
of-
like, oh, I don't think I can get up today and go and do that. Variety is the spice of life, I suppose. Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. And going into politics, I'm not going to take you too far down the rabbit hole, but obviously the audience will be interested. Yeah, we've obviously got the new coalition
Yeah.
coming through. What are your expectations on how they're going to be able to manage that? I mean, I guess it's the beauty and the curse of MMP that
Yeah.
there's a whole lot of different views that they're going to
Yeah.
have to work through.
I think people
over
might
time.
expect me to say it. So I think it's going to be really good. And I haven't always thought that. I probably am experienced / a bit cynical. I think when
Yeah.
you do anything for a while, I was in politics 14, 15 years, you get a bit cynical. And so, I didn't necessarily have really high expectations, as you say, MMP. And clearly, I've thought for some time 3 parties was going to be required in government. And so that's, it's not necessarily the best preconditions for government. But reading the documents that have come out of it and seeing things, I think in substance it's going to be really good government for business. That's important. Obviously I would say that my role, but I think if business is going well, you're a long way to making a country go well.
And I think a lot of New Zealand voted on that basis.
Totally. And a lot of people voted against what they didn't like as opposed to necessarily what they did. But I think it looks, on paper, I think it looks good. Yeah, Winston Peters will jump up and down and rack up the media, and they'll get very excitable about that, and there'll be those sort of sideshows. But I think in substance, it's actually going to be a government that, personally, from my own sort of little vantage point around business and maybe reining back in a few sort of policies that didn't like, I think
What
it's going
about
to be a
the
good government.
Siggy's policy, talking about policies?
I'm not just saying this to dodge the bullet of it. I'm like
Hey, it's not a cross-examination today,
Correct.
Simon, so it's
correct.
okay.
I'm like an average dude. Is dude a word that young people use? Probably not. I'm an average person. I don't really follow all the news, so it's kind of passed me down. And I don't smoke.
Yeah.
Very rarely the odd cigar or something, but I basically don't smoke at all. So it's kind of not relevant to me. I kind of know in the background it's got a lot of controversy. I,
Yeah,
I read the coalition document with New Zealand First, and I thought, you put all that together, I reckon that's going to be a government I like.
yeah.
If they can kind of do it.
I guess it, yeah. So you're just acting like any New Zealander now, where you're looking at that and going, "Oh, does that impact me? That particular policy actually doesn't." But there are obviously people that have strong views about that because maybe they're thinking about. I guess though, like, have you thought about the fact that your children potentially might take up smoking?
Better
if they-
not.
Yeah, or you're just like, no, I've got
My
that
parents-
covered.
my
Discipline.
children will not smoke. No, I mean, you know what really, it's a bit of a tangent, but you know, you've asked me, so I am totally wound up like so many friends, colleagues vape. And I'm just
Yeah.
telling you, this is not going to
So
go
you're more
well.
of a vapor. No, kidding.
I'm not even remotely. I'm just thinking, you know, I know that there's supposed evidence that kind of says it's not as bad as smoking, but I'm telling you now, we're going to look back at this at 40 years and say that was not a good thing.
Yeah.
Taking all that in, like that massive dose of, and, you know, I think it's, you know, some of my colleagues are just always in the car park vaping. It's not going to go well.
It's definitely an issue, and it's, you know, maybe the evidence isn't there in the same way that it is
Yet.
now for the smokes, for
Yeah.
the cigarettes that have been around forever.
Yeah.
But obviously, there's so many people that have taken that up. So, to your point, I mean, what's the difference if we're readily enabling the vape
Yeah.
culture anyway?
You know, put a bit of a bubblegum flavour on it and
And
everything's
then
okay,
and
but
then
it's
good for
not.
everyone.
Yeah, I'm worried about that. Vaping and social media. I remember talking to Paddy Gower, and he was really wound up about those two things as well. And he's right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, he's done some really interesting stuff
Yeah.
and around alcohol as well.
Yeah.
I mean, all of those things. Anyway, moving back then into housing.
yes. Sorry, I got you off
which
to a
is-
tangent
no,
there. Well,
I
you
think
did ask me about
I
smoking.
put it there, but I was like, this is very topical at the moment.
Yeah.
How do we feel? But moving back into that housing space, I guess like maybe we're stopping people from saving the deposit if they're spending too much on cigarettes, and that's sort of where we're tying this in, Simon.
I like your segue. You know, I really feel for all New Zealanders who don't have. I was going to say younger New Zealanders, not just younger New Zealanders. You know, it's hard if you're young with prices what they are and interest rates where they are
Yeah,
and
the
all of
average
those
age
things.
is around 37.
I reckon the worst thing in the world to be, or in New Zealand to be, is like someone who's on the pension who doesn't own their own home, right? That's like you have no
You can't afford.
hope of ever getting there. That's kind of like the true vulnerable is word we use these days. So it's really hard, I think, to get on the ladder. And that's why I feel, you know, going back to my story, privileged that we kind of took the leap. It seemed scary at the time, but, you know, we were fortunate like that.
Where Slice fits in all of that is we are trying to educate and help people get in at a younger age so they don't get to that point where it's too late and it's too difficult. And it just gets harder and harder each year, you know, on average as prices rise. But we support people that can get in with a 5% deposit or can purchase with parents, with friends, and all of that with, you know, $20,000 to $40,000, not the full 100 to 200,000 you need to
Yeah.
get into $1 million a property.
It's amazing, I think, for what you're doing. It's really, and it's great to see, you know, someone like yourself, you know, not young, not old though,
I'm
who's
not
out
young.
there.
No.
Yeah, well, you know, it's not
When I don't
dangerous
get-
territory
When
for a
I don't
middle-aged
get,
man
I
to be.
know it's like, what do you want to be?
Whatever, you know, it's you are whatever. But you know,
I get
it's,
sad when I'm not ID'd at the supermarket. That's where I'm at.
I am just like, I'm amazed. I mean, to be fair, it hasn't. But my wife, who's older than you, every so often she gets ID'd, and she's just like, yes. but perplexing, like really bizarre. Anyway,
Yeah, funny. I mean, in that regard, I think that's a big part of where we try to come in. But politically, have we seen enough to support with the housing crisis that has been around for a long time? I'll let you on a little secret because
Yeah.
I don't think you'll know this, but I actually ran to lead the Opportunities Party.
amazing.
I think that was in 2018 or
Good
something.
on you.
And I did like a 2-week social campaign. I came second. So I thought that was pretty
I
good.
feel I know you've said that vaguely. I can sort of remember that. And, you know, I know the current leader a bit and, you know, and some of the guys and girls involved in it in the past. And, you know, there's a very interesting proposition. I'm just...
The policies were sort of
Yeah.
what drew me into that. And they did have, you know, a very strong view on capital gains. And whatever
Yeah.
the policy is, though, I mean, there's different ways to attack that. And
Yeah.
it can be from supply side, it can be from demand side, or
Yeah.
managing either or. But Yeah, I guess what do you see government's role as being, and
No.
not particularly your policies
No. Well, I don't
or
have any policy
experiences,
anymore.
but
Unfortunately, this is why this stuff is complicated. Is everyone's got a sort of a point. You take capital gains tax. In my personal view on capital gains tax, and I got stuck into the then government, and I believe, but everyone's got their own version of events. It was a critical part in just harassing the government every day, so they never did a capital gains tax. I didn't like.
cross-examining, if you will.
Correct. I didn't like what they were doing because it seemed to me it was another tax, and they were just going to increase the revenue that they were taking from New Zealanders. If they'd done it in a fiscally neutral way, right, where
Like
they're putting on a
reinvested in supply or something.
well, if they'd put on a capital gains tax, but reduced, say, personal and corporate tax rates or something, so they weren't just trying to increase the pie. In theory, I can see the merits of a capital gains tax. Like, as I sit here, I think it's not that those sort of demand type policies don't have a role. They can do. We've just had a debate around a wax.
Fundamentally, the problem actually sits on the supply side.
Correct, but fundamentally, like if you're really wanting to do something in New Zealand, it's kind of much more of a supply issue. Build more, and you ask what's the government's role in that? Well, I think we've got a problem with the RMA and various other
Handbraking,
planning
Resource Management
yeah, and
Act,
just
yeah.
it's good for the environment, but only in as much as nothing frickin' happens, right? So that it's good to see that the government's going to get into that. It's a tough, complicated issue, but I think that's where it's at. And then you ask what's the government's specific role? I think I obviously was on the right of New Zealand politics, and so I don't think the government needs to kind of get in and quote solve everything. But when it comes to housing, I certainly think its role really is in helping those who kind of can't get there in. Now, it doesn't mean they're going to have a mansion in Herne Bay, but good, respectable housing. I'm old-fashioned in as much as I think it was Margaret Thatcher, used to say that property owning democracy. I still think there's something in that. And so that then leads you into policies like kind of, rent to own and, bit of help out here and there, but where they
Paying
own
our
it.
orders as well, where they were given that first home grant. We took a lot of customers through that.
Yeah.
And we work with a lot of the different schemes. So we do support sort of parent and child, which is actually a big part of our audience that comes through. So I've bought 2 properties. The first was leveraging off my mum's property.
Brilliant.
And the second was purchasing with a partner. But for both of those purchases, they had only 40K. So you don't actually need to have lots if you get really creative. And that's a great example that you've brought up there around those schemes like Rent to Own. You've got You Own, you've got ERA, you've got NZ Housing Foundation. There's actually a lot of schemes.
And what I
exist.
take at a high level from what you're saying is, absolutely the government has a role, but actually there's private sector and, business solutions to some of these things. I mean,
Don't get me wrong, though. I moved into private sector because I felt that I couldn't fix it in government.
Yeah.
So that's sort of why.
But that's where I'm at, increasing a lot of things. We shouldn't just look to government for everything. And it's interesting what I've taken again from what you're saying, which I've given zero thought, but it's a bit like Sharesies and that whole democratizing shares so that you can go on with anything.
Home ownership,
but home ownership and the ability to kind of have a share and so and get yourself on the ladder. Now that's not an entirely full solution, but it's like
it's an avenue.
Yeah, and it's getting you a step in, and then hopefully that step becomes a few steps,
and then you have the opportunity to go again and to build on that wealth. But it's really that first step into home ownership or into property that's the challenge.
And look, when you purchase is a real issue as well. Like right at the moment, it's very tough because prices are still really high.
So lack of supply again at the moment, and it's just because people aren't selling because they're happy to wait.
Yeah, and interest rates are not the highest they've ever been, but relatively speaking, relatively high. And so, it's tough.
Ultimately, the longer you're in, and this is historically what we've seen, the better the result for you. So whenever you can get in is really the answer there, I think.
Totally. You can't just say, oh, well, it'll always be the same. But historically in New Zealand, if you've bought a house, it has always, always, always gone up in the medium to long term.
Over that 10-year, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think going into that sort of, talking about the private sector, and I mean, we're an example of that, where we're trying to tackle it from there, and you're now at business chambers. How do you feel about the way that our system is set up, it's a tough one because ironically, even though it's hard to get into property, the thing that we do support in New Zealand is purchasing property.
Yeah.
So from a bank perspective and the way that system's set up, we're very much set up to lend for property and not for business. So then it can be hard to even build a business in the private sector, or it's hard for the private sector to get the funds they need to solve the housing crisis. You know, it's a circular issue.
I don't come to you today with like 9 things we should do to fix that.
Oh, that would be cool if you did.
Yeah, well, no.
No, yeah, maybe that's my job.
But the top party, the Opportunities Party, they've got them. Just go to www.opportunities.
Did you just change parties?
No, but I'm sure they do. But I'm not in any party now. I'm a very neutral sort of.
And so am I. I'm not necessarily top either, but I just loved the policies they had at the time.
But I agree with your problem definition, right? It's it's in New Zealand in the end, and it's a bit of a problem for us, certainly versus even Australia, although they have high prices in their big cities. But certainly in America or so, and where it's much more relative incentive to be in business, to be investing in things that are growing in economy and productivity and the like. And so that's a real problem in New Zealand. You look at our rich list, and the wealthiest in New Zealand is not always, but very often are in commercial or residential property, and they've made a lot of, and I don't begrudge them that, but I'm just saying that, and those are the arguments for, legislative solutions around those issues like capital gains tax and so on.
Well, that's number one. So we've got 8 to go.
But I just want to say someone takes this clip out of context and just as Simon Bridges wants a capital gains tax. I'm open to it if I thought that the government was going to do something like lower the corporate tax rate to deal with that issue you're talking about, right? To get investment going in that direction rather than the property direction. But just to say, well, we'll keep having shitty business policies and we'll keep corporate tax rate relative to other countries.
And we'll make it hard to grow in the property space.
And
so
we'll have a
basically,
capital
we'll
gains
just
tax.
tank GDP
Correct.
in New Zealand.
That's a recipe for more people in Australia.
Yeah.
This feels like politics again.
I know, I'm sorry. But I mean, I did say I've had an interest in it. So it's probably going to go there anyway.
Yeah. Well, we could see it in the future. I mean, they're saying Amy leader.
Crazy.
So I'm just saying to you, objectively, if you're thinking about your life and the things you like, don't go into politics. It's my advice to everyone. It's like, unless you really can't get the bug out of your head, but it's an irrational thing.
Do you know
which
what?
means no sleep, no work-life balance, phone always going, becoming a weirdo.
Yeah, becoming a weirdo.
That's just another, that's just another word I think no one under about 30 uses.
What, weirdo?
Yeah.
No, I reckon I use that.
Do you? Okay.
Yeah, I'm done with that.
Good.
But I mean, I'm probably, I'm now, as you know, am I young or old? We don't know.
In between.
Yeah, in between, no man's land. But yeah, I mean, we saw that with Jacinda. I mean, that's how she positioned her exit, she was exhausted, right? So it does seem to
Which
be
would have been true.
narrative.
I mean, it was also, she was on track to lose, but there's no doubt it was also true. She would have, she would have been spent.
Yeah. And I think for where I'm at, it's not going to be a quick return into politics. It was a bit of a flash in the pan anyway, but
I
really,
see it happening. I can see it.
You got a crystal ball.
Yeah.
What can you see with the property market then?
A property market, well, within the next 10 years, it's going up.
Oh, that's
and so if you go in now, you will over time make money. Yeah,
that's point
what
two.
That's what I see.
Yeah, I think that's a fair premonition to have.
Yeah.
I think on my
buy and hold.
Buy and hold. I believe that.
If you can.
Did you? Yeah. Did you make that up? Did you?
Yeah. No, I might have.
Number 3. It's this thing called buy and hold.
I think if you basically summarise our conversation so far into a few 1, 2, 3, 4 bullet points, it will be one of the most inspirational lists anyone has ever seen.
I love that you have that hope for this episode. I'm finding it interesting.
It's going to go viral. It's going to go viral.
We can only hope.
Yeah.
And then we can help more people because our software and everything that we do for the buyers is actually free. So that is the goal.
How good is that? It's not a lot in life that's free anymore.
No,
but they do say the best things in life are free.
But yeah, moving into the private sector side of things, I think I'm in no hurry to move into government. Part of that, I mean, you talk about exhaustion and challenges with a bunch of things, but is also that, there is opportunity for the private sector to move quite quickly. There's less, requirements and people that you have to work through. Just in the same as a big corporate, it becomes more and more challenging. But I think you're right. It is a question of, okay, if we're going to throw water on New Zealand's dominant kind of growth strategy, which is in property investment in New Zealand. What are we replacing that with? So it has to be
Tech
we take from here
and
and we throw
property
into
apps
tech. We throw it all at Slice.
platforms. Yes. No, I think I think it is.
Introduce a capital gains tax and give all of that money to the Slice platform,
Yeah.
which helps people
Yeah.
also into the property, but then we'll become such a big company that will grow New Zealand's GDP.
But you'll go vertical. You'll have other platforms and various areas. No, I think that the solution, what New Zealand needs to do is needs to move big into technology. We already got amazing businesses, but they're our highest paying jobs in the economy. They're deeply productive. We've got a productivity disease. Everyone
They can
talks
move
about it.
quickly.
Yeah, and so I think if you look at Auckland, for example, we just need to be positioning ourselves as a first-class, world-class tech hub.
And I think we have that opportunity.
we
Like
totally
I
do.
myself have been in the space for about 5 or so years now, and a lot of my friends have moved overseas to do the London thing, to do
Right.
XYZ. But I feel really strongly about the network that we have here. Grid Auckland, where we're filming right now,
Yeah, I
has
love
been
it.
a super supportive network for me, and I've met so many great entrepreneurs across New Zealand. But we're not necessarily enabled in the way that we should be.
No.
Particularly when you reference some of the companies and some of the amazing work that we do compared to Australia or
Yeah.
America, where they're throwing money at ideas.
Oh, it's amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, I sort of knew about them, but this company Halter, which is
Yeah,
you know,
they
an
do
agricultural business.
agricultural tech, and they can actually, based on the collars around the cows, they can
Amazing.
tell how they're feeling.
so good.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just like I wish I thought of it.
Yeah,
Probably wouldn't have done anything with it, but still, and 20 others that have 50 others in Auckland, and certain subsectors like I think fintech, health tech, got the capacity to be really strong in what I sort of call creative tech. Whether that's sort of screen or gaming or some of these things.
Yeah,
where
we
we've got
do
some niche
really-
excellence.
we do really well, punch above our weight in that
Yeah.
space for sure. Like
Yeah.
the virtual reality. But yeah, I mean, there's all of these great companies that can do it, but it does become, if we are going to do these things, change the way that we are encouraging growth in New Zealand. What's the replacement? So maybe we
Totally.
should just form a new party, Simon.
What we call it. The
Simon's Slice of
well,
Paradise.
if we took Amy and Simon, it would be
Samey.
a stop. Like keep with the top party, but just
Oh.
put S at the front.
But
S top.
stop. Or
Or set up.
Arsenal.
Yeah. Okay. It's got a ring to
It's
it.
got
Yeah.
it's got a something to it.
Yeah.
In terms of, I guess, what your advice would be, just personally, based on your experience with property to a first home buyer,
Yeah.
like, what would you say to help them on their journey?
Put your hands over your eyes and panic. No. Look, I think my advice would be you don't need to rush into anything, but do your homework. That's always good advice. Do your due diligence. But I would encourage you, if it stacks up and you feel pretty comfy, and as much as your bank's prepared to loan you the money, you're sitting there and you'll still have some disposable income. I would always, I think, encourage. This is maybe a bit old-fashioned, but if you partnered up and and it's a stable relationship and all those things,
Or not? No, I'm kidding.
yeah, well, no, or not. I mean, if you've got a high income and you're solo and
No, but I
and all you're doing is spending it on vaping and booze and you might as well put it into a house.
0.7, move your money away from vapes and into the housing market.
Totally. So homework, due diligence. You'll never be entirely fare free, but there's a sense that this is manageable over time with relatively high interest rates. I don't think people regret taking that step. And it is like I was just talking to a really wealthy guy actually who was saying he got advice from some other really wealthy guy. Sorry, they both were guys, but it was kind of like, actually renting. There's nothing wrong with renting in terms of other, you want a fancy yacht, you want to, Airbnb
A car or whatever.
renting. There's nothing wrong with renting, but I think an exception to that is I do think there is something deeply sort of psychologically beneficial from having your own home that is yours. That's if you paint the wall a crazy color because that's what you want or your daughter wants or whatever, that's cool because it's your home and it kind of always will be.
It's like a financial well-being thing, and then it's also the emotional well-being.
That's what I'm
as well.
saying. That's
Yeah.
exactly what psychological, emotional
Yeah.
spiritual level well-being. Yeah.
Love
You can
that.
go out and plant a garden, some carrots or some I was just about to go turnips, and then I was going to turn it into a flower, tulips.
Tulips.
You could plant both of those things.
Endless opportunities.
I mean, you could do
Simon.
that renting, I suppose, but it's more
It's a little
satisfying when it's your dirt.
Yeah, there's something different about, working on your own backyard, isn't
Yeah.
there? And
Yeah.
there's a reason why they call it the Kiwi dream, and I think
Correct.
that's because people
Pavlova Paradise,
Pavlova paradise.
which was a book written by a guy called Austin Mitchell, who became a Labour Party member of Parliament in the UK for the seat of Grimsby, a fishing village up north, and I worked for him in the UK
Oh.
for a small period of time.
So you did work for Labour for a time? No.
I did actually. It was
Indirectly.
Yeah, because I wanted to be at the House of Commons, and
Amazing.
it's part of the scholarship thing I was on. But anyway,
Cool.
yeah.
Well, we've got one final question for you, Simon.
oh no.
No, you've been a real sport, so I think you're going to find this one easy. It is, if your house had a doorbell and that doorbell played a theme song, what theme song would it play?
That is such a good, quirky little question. Perfect Day by Lou Reed.
Perfect
You know
Day.
that one? Such a perfect day.
Hey.
Do you know that song?
Yeah,
or-
yeah, I do
Yeah,
actually.
good. It's, I thought I want to maybe
Make an assumption.
pass you by.
Yeah,
Great
yeah.
song, great lyrics. And it's what comes to mind right now.
Love that. Well,
Yeah.
thank you so much for joining us. And I know that we really dove into the politics, but I don't think it was intentional. I think it's
No,
just
no,
'cause
and
I'm
it wasn't.
passionate about
It was
as well.
politically unpolitical.
Yeah,
It wasn't. We were
politically
just,
incorrect.
yeah, no, we were just having a few reckons there. I mean, one former top leadership candidate to another leadership candidate. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much, Simon. I've loved having you on.
Hey, great to talk, Jamie.
Thank you for joining our community. Buying property isn't easy, but listening in will get you one step closer on your journey. Please leave an Apple or Spotify review and provide feedback so we can improve your experience. Join our Facebook group, A Safe Space to Learn Together, or follow us on Instagram at Slice2Buy. If you have any questions or topics you would like us to touch on, you can email us at hello@slice2buy.com. A quick reminder, Slice the podcast does not provide personalised investment advice. We are not acting as financial advisors or taking into account your circumstances. To get personalised advice, join us at slice2buy.com and engage with our partners who can act as your financial advisor or lawyer and support you with your specific needs.